Hey everyone, before I get started, I just want to remind you that if you like my content, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and then join the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community by clicking the link in the caption.
Good evening, everybody. Hey, it's Tuesday. It's the 17th. I hope everybody's having a good day. I just want to say thank you for being with us at Patreon and in our Discord chat room. And I want to say thank you to all the crew members, Samson, Gigi, Brian. Thank you very much for all your spiritual leading. A lot of people have been asking about you, so thank you very much. Doing a wonderful job. Wisdom is fascinating, and you seem to bring that. I'll jump right in and say that, look, there's an article that's out tonight, and I'll be with my first one. It's the Parliamentary Finance Committee. It says Baghdad has fulfilled its obligations to the expired Kurdistan region government. I think this guy's, giving a little poke to the Kurdistan region. It says the head of the rights movement, he's a member of the Parliamentary Finance Committee. His name is Hussein Mohanez. Confirmed that Baghdad has fulfilled all its obligations to Erbil. And he goes on and says that noting that the government violated the law by granting Kurdistan financial sums in the form of loans. All right, whatever. But he goes on, the Kurdistan government has not changed since the fall of the late Saddam regime since 2003. And he goes on and continues to exercise, and the government continues to exercise its authority and rule in the region through a blatant dictatorial approach. So anyway, 5 governments have changed in Iraq and the regional government remains in position. So he sounds like he's got a problem with that. It says here, the regional government is an expired government. I've heard talk about that bit, that they're an expired government. I think if you guys do your research, he may not be wrong. But anyway, it goes on, it says expired government that has lost its legitimacy and therefore there is no point clowning around. A lot of emojis were going off about that today. Okay, and the point is no more clowning around in respect to the financial dues and the budget, and especially since the government of Baghdad has fulfilled all of its legal obligations towards the region. And I just had to say that because, you know what? Clowning around reminds me of another place I've been in a long time because, there's a lot of clowns in the world. So, but anyway, we're going to move on. It says the parliamentary praise for the government's measures to promote electronic payment. Members of the House of Representatives praised the government's steps aimed at promoting electronic payments. We all know that they've been working on this process for quite a long time. And so some of the articles, they kind of express like it's happening like right now, kind of the beginning. Absolutely false as far as I'm concerned. A lot of this stuff has been in place for years. Okay, it says the steps aimed at promoting electronic payments, considering them an economic necessity, aimed at withdrawing liquidity from manual circulation to the formal banking system. Taking it out of that informal banking system. So anyway, it says they emphasize that this policy is free of negatives. In other words, it's free of negative circumstances. It's a good thing. Meanwhile, representatives called for the gradual implementation of this decision to ban cash payments within the government institutions. So right there, basically it says it's a gradual implementation. Well, when they say gradual, did they mean they got started back when al-Sudani got in office? I would say so. All right. It says electronic payment means that all cash will be transferred to cards, and the cards will be from banks. This means that 80% of paper money will be transferred to cards. And he goes on, even the Finance Committee member, Jamal Cougar, he says that in case this government will have cash, and these steps in this case, in this case, the government should have cash, and these steps should be implemented increasingly to move cash out of homes and pockets and into banks. So that right there is basically telling us they're trying to, and they have been for quite a long time, reducing the cash in circulation, which is a good thing. All right. It says that the success of this project depends on the government's will, and when it is implemented, people will be forced to use it because they need it in their daily transactions. it goes on and says this step has no negative aspects, so there's no negative considerations here. It says, on the contrary, it's important for controlling funds, achieving transparency, and reducing corruption. So you probably have seen a lot of blowback about this circumstance over the last couple of years. And I think that's a total true statement. He goes, this step will contribute significantly to reducing financial corruption, regulating spending and revenues, and strengthening oversight by the Financial Supervision Bureau and relevant authorities. And so he goes on and says that the decision must be preceded by awareness campaigns and the provision of practical alternatives so that it does not become an additional burden. And he notes that Parliament is monitoring this implementation to ensure the citizens' protection. Again, I'm going to reiterate it. They're reiterating it. They've been talking about this for a long time. This is not new. And here's a snippet. Iraq began implementing electronic transactions for state institutions in January of 2024. So to my point, following a directive from the Iraqi government to transition all financial transactions within the government institutions to electronic payment cards. And we all know that about the gas stations. About 2 years ago, real close, they started implementing this process a long time ago. And what was it doing? It was taking cash out of the citizens' pockets in doing so. Then it goes on and says the Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani mandated is a key word. There's a mandate. He's mandated that all ministries and government institutions present comprehensive transition plan by December 31st, 2024, right? With the full shift to economic consideration is going to happen. But it says electronic payments to commence by July 1st in 2025. That's in the coming days. So with full shift to electronic payments expected to commence by July 1st, 2025. I have to say that that's probably a pretty powerful situation because that's coming up in a few days. And so in my view is that, look, there's been videos out there, and we've talked about this before, that showed them destroying perfectly good currency post 2018. And what was their game is to reduce the note count. And the electronic platform come in and is probably effectively sopping that extra currency up. And have they given plenty of time? They started in January 2024, and then they even moved it even more intensely subsequently at the beginning of 2025, or at least 6 months ago, December, right? And then obviously, where are we now? We're 6 months plus into that. And now they have a deadline, 2 weeks. So when it comes to the education, they're doing what they should be doing, is reminding the citizens that if you're not on the cards, you're probably going to have somewhat of a problem. Okay, excuse me. Another article is called Planning. Iraq's near total dependence on the oil sector is a fragile model that must be abandoned. So again, they don't want to be stuck on just oil, and they want to move to maximizing non-oil revenues in Iraq. They've had challenges, but what they've been doing is that they reduce reliance on oil resources. And they also go on and say recurring crises in the oil markets, particularly in recent years, and we all probably have experienced that at the pump here in the United States. But again, that's a global situation. What has it done? It's exposed the fragility of this model. In other words, the oil rentier state. It says the necessitating an urgent transition to a more diversified and sustainable economic model. Okay, again, back to that. Is this something new? Not necessarily, but they're reiterating it. They're making people be aware of that this has been an ongoing process. And here again, here's another snippet. Iraq has made notable progress in increasing its non-oil revenues over the past 2 years to mitigate the impact of oil shocks. Though it remains heavily reliant on oil, non-oil revenues have risen steadily, driven by efforts to diversify its economy and sources and reduce vulnerability to volatile oil prices. It says, according to a senior staff official, Iraq aims to raise non-oil revenues to 20% of total income which is addressed in the persistent budget deficit. It says before the 2023 to 2025 budget, that's that tripartite budget, non-oil revenues accounted for about 7% of the total income. By 2024, total non-oil revenues jumped from approximately 4.7 trillion dinars in 2023 to 14 trillion dinars. Well, 4.7 trillion dinars is about, $4 billion. So you can see that they've increased it. And so they're not just focused in on it. It's nothing new. It says this increase has been attributed to improved customs duties, when we all know that the Escada system's involved. Expanded taxation, similarly, and contributions from sectors like housing, transport, and construction. What they don't talk about is tourism yet, but they're just giving some basics, basically. Interesting way playing on words. Okay, so recent data suggests progress, which claims that Iraq has achieved 60% of its target for maximizing non-oil revenues. 60%, that's huge. And basically it's supported by infrastructure projects and potential nuclear deals, for instance. They imply that. Didn't they just tell us that they have thorium and uranium to inclusive in their estimated natural resources of $16 trillion. It's pretty big. Okay, so they go on back to the banking reform. Banking reform has been ongoing ever since Sudani got involved, thank God. And thank you for those citizens that are able to appreciate that and they acknowledge that. That's really cool. Okay, so it says they're moving towards a more efficient banking structure. And we all know this because this isn't something that's brand new. It's actually it's approximately 22 years in the making. 22 years. Now, I haven't been in the Iraqi dinar for 22 years, but I have been around for a long time. But I've seen the progress, and that's what keeps me focused, is because it's a complex situation. I've said it numerous times. It's been a long process. It's been tiresome, and things have changed. Look at all the new digital transformations that have taken place. Look at all the new technology that's taking place. Look at the new SWIFT system. Look at the ISO 2022. We didn't have all that. They didn't have the transparency. They didn't have the anti-corruption. They didn't have the anti-money laundering laws. They didn't have the currency manipulation laws. They didn't have any of that. But now they do. And so now you're starting to see that all of these things are really, truly coming together. And it's beautiful to see it. I really believe that. So anyway, the article goes on and says the financial expert, he says that experts unanimously agree to the importance of proceeding with the comprehensive restructuring of the state-owned banking sector, a move overseen by the central bank in collaboration with the global, keywords, global consulting firm Ernst & Young. It says the process includes the restructuring of 6 out of 7 state-owned banks in response to directives from the Prime Minister. It says experts believe the approach represents one of the most important economic decisions of the current decade and the cornerstone of any genuine economic reform. So what they're doing, the experts believe that this is one of the most important economic decisions in a decade. It says the restructuring of the government banking sector represents a step towards changing the course of performance in Iraq and will help stimulate the national economy, as the financial sector represents the primary access of economic recovery and the effective driver of the labor market. They're going to be creating jobs because of the nature of the Development Road Project and all those other things that we've been talking about. This is a really good piece. It says the banking reform will have a clear positive impact and enhance the financial products offered to the public, especially since the reform process is being undertaken in cooperation with the reputable international companies that hold significant sway in the global financial arena. And then they talk about comprehensive restructuring. It says that the Iraqi Business Council, the Iraqi British Business Council, the IBBC, conference in London recently says this. Dr. Salman, he confirms that the comprehensive restructuring of the banking sector being implemented with the help of leading international consulting firms He also announced that the Iraqi government is cooperating with Ernst & Young to restructure 6 or 7 of those banks, and including Industrial Bank, the Real Estate Bank, the Rafadain Bank, and the Rashid Bank. You got to think that, well, they're taking this really pretty seriously, and they've been in this process for a very long time. The government advisor, he notes that they're talking about international standards. He says that the Iraqi Trade Bank, or the Trade Bank of Iraq, signed separate contracts with K2I and KPMG to help restructure its internal and external operations to meet international standards, and that the private banking sector will undergo reforms following the signing of a contract between the Central Bank of Iraq and Oliver Wyman. You guys have heard all of those names, probably not quite ad nauseum, but we have seen those over the last 2.5 years quite significantly. So it says that the restructuring plan, Dr. Salman revealed that the Rafadain Bank, which is the largest institution in Iraq, will be transformed into the Rafadain First Bank. That's, if you go back in history, you're going to find that there's some importance to those words. I'm not going to get into it, but I'm telling you, there's some importance to that and what the meaning behind it is. You got to go back in history. Okay, the remaining shares will be offered to private banks and international investors. So look, they're going to reduce their structure. They're going to have less. The government's going to have less. The private sector is going to get the most, and it's expected to be completed and approved by the Iraqi government. And they're talking about by the end of this year. I don't look at dates like that in the sense of, oh, we're not going anywhere until they have this completely 100% done. It's a process that's going to take place, just like the development road process. The development road process is not going to be done, or the project isn't going to be done in 2025. It's going to take 10 years. It's going to take maybe even more to finish the whole project. But they got to get started somewhere, and that's where we are. They're going to jumpstart this economy, and they're going to go international, and they're going to integrate into the international financial system. And that's what's going to jumpstart this whole thing, I think. And so is Iraq ready? I would suggest that Iraq is ready, and we're waiting for the integration. But again, we're only as good as the information that we have in print. Mr. Akram emphasized the importance of restructuring the government banks, describing it as one of the most important decisions issued since 2003. So that's 22 years. Like I've said, 22 years. Okay. He notes that this approach will produce strong and well-established banks. It says the financial sector requires solid banks capable of opening accounts with the major international banks. And check this out. This is it. This is really fun. International banks such as Citibank and JP Morgan. Really? Oh, we're not doing anything with Iraq. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Have you heard that before? Have you heard that? I think I have. In fact, I know I have. I was going to say a little brief story. It was when I went in and opened an account at Chase Bank, and I asked the gentleman, I said, do you know anything about the Iraq dinar? And he says, no, I don't. I go, did you know that your company is in Iraq? Did you know this? Did you know that? And then I showed him a picture of the vice president. I go, do you know who this is? And he said, no. I'm not going to tell you where I was, because that's probably not fair, and I might get some blowback from that. But the fact remains is it's a true story, and I still have the account. I still have it. And I haven't even used it, but I will, most likely. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to move forward. It says, basically what they're talking about is Citibank, JP Morgan, opening bank accounts, facilitating global financial transactions. Really? So Iraq's involved with Citibank, JP Morgan, and others, other banks, maybe not bigger, but facilitating global financial transactions, and they're not involved. I shake my head. It's humorous. I think it's really funny. All right. It says, for his part, banking expert, this gentleman by the name of Al-Avadi considers the government's move to restructure the Iraqi banking sector one of the most important economic decisions of the current decade. And again, they mentioned the cornerstone of genuine economic reform. He notes that it's not merely a regulatory change, but rather a necessary. You heard the words necessity, necessary. Okay, I like those buzzwords. Okay, but rather a necessary revolution to lift the financial system out of its current state, enable it to lead the desired economic development. And this gentleman says Iraq's economic future begins with reforming its financial system. I think he's not wrong. I just don't think that they're just starting. I think they've already been doing that. As we noted earlier on, they've been working on this since 2003. It says he explains that its success requires national cooperation between the government, the central bank, banks, the private sector, and the international community. And I think we have all of that. I think we've proven that. I think the data supports that. I think that that statement right there is likely to be turned out to be past tense, because they have national cooperation with the government. They have the central bank on board. They have banks and correspondent banks, international and global banks. They have the private sector, and they have the international community supporting them. We've shown that in the news. Okay, a body warns, though, the comprehensive restructuring of the Iraqi banking sector is not a luxury option, but rather it's an absolute necessity for Iraq's economic survival and progress. He says that it is a major surgical operation that requires boldness, wisdom, careful planning, decisive implementation. They need to have it done properly and at the right time. He adds that the success in this process will have a tremendous multiplier effect on all aspects of the Iraqi economy, as it has contributed to attracting investment, revitalizing the private sector, creating jobs, integrating the informal market, and combating corruption. Informal market is an illegal market, and for what? Combating corruption. So they're integrating the informal market. In other words, what they do, they reduce the dollar transactions, and they've reduced the ability for them to do trade in cash. Back to the cards. It's phenomenal. It's beautiful. Okay. The next thing is, it says spokesman emphasized the expected restructuring and the importance required that merging private banks and transforming them into strong banks with the goal of creating large banking entities with significant capital. It says these entities are capable of financing. So these entities like the Citibank and like the JP Morgan and those other banks, it says these entities are capable of financing strategic projects in what? The largest projects in the whole country, or even in the world. With what? Energy, infrastructure, industries. So they can do it better by what? Handling risks, reducing operating costs, enhancing financial stability. This will lead to the creation of strong and efficient banks. Reducing costs sounds like blockchain to me. Okay? It talks about electronic payments. The new systems are cheaper, faster, and more efficient, transparent, and anti-corruption. That's what it's going to be. And we all know that. We've shown in our videos that there's a blockchain environment coming. He goes on and explains that the strategic importance of this approach lies in supporting economic diversification, as the Iraqi economic vision to move away from oil cannot be implemented without a strong banking system that directs the financing towards productive sectors such as agriculture, industry, tourism, technology, and contributes to attracting foreign direct investment, as international investors require the existence of sound, transparent, and advanced financial systems to ensure the ease of transferring funds. I don't know about you guys, but this is like one of the best articles that I've seen in a long time. We've known just about all of this for years of study, even with the last over 2 years in Patreon with Militia Man and Crew. But also, I've been around long enough to know that all of this stuff we've seen in writing. This data has been part of a plan since what, 2003? Absolutely, it has been. They're showing the importance of the reform plan. They're basically telling us that how important it is for Iraq's integration into the global financial system. The help that Iraq has had thus far from the largest financial institutions in the world, I believe, has been stellar. The infrastructure needed to build it out that has been tested and been proven. We see that by the TIR system today. We see that by the ISCUTA system. These are global electronic payment systems for the private and the public. And what is it doing? It's interlinking international correspondent banks, all of the above. All of this was done by what key word did I bring up tonight? by necessity. It's not a random chance. It has been a requirement for reforms to be successful. These major institutions that we've just mentioned are not in business for failure, be sure. I mean, the likes of K2, Ernst & Young, Oliver Wyman, etc. All of those companies are professional and they don't like to make mistakes, and they're in business to do what? Make money and to do things properly with efficiency and transparency. So ultimately, at the end of the day, they have the support and the cooperation of the government, the central bank, the banks, the private sector, the international community. All I can say is, based off this article today, is that we're in powerful times. Powerful times. And the last thing I'm going to get into tonight is that we know that the TIR, which is the International Shipment for Trucking, Transit, they made a move from Poland to the UAE, and now they've done the reverse. They've been successful. It says the General Authority of Customs announced that on Tuesday, the transit of international shipment from the UAE to Poland passing through Iraqi territory within the framework of the TIR agreement. It says the General Authority of Customs announced the transit of international commercial shipment coming from the Emirati of Ras Al Khaimah. It says that the United Emirates and heading to the Republic of Poland, passing through Iraqi territory. It says within the framework of the implementation of the International Transport of Goods. That's what it's called. International Transport of Goods Agreement, which is the TIR. It says a shipment entered Iraq through the Treble border crossing with the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, continued its way through the Iraqi territory to exit through the Khalil border crossing towards Turkey, and then its final destination in Poland. It says a tracking process was, this is important, the tracking process was carried out using the GPS system throughout the shipment transit period inside of Iraq without recording any delays, any errors, and in step that reflects with the effectiveness of the customs control system and the development of technical procedures. It says this crossing represents a clear indication of Iraq's commitment to implementing international agreements, and reflect its advanced position as a vital trade corridor. So it reflects its advanced position as a vital trade corridor. And then they go on that they basically are continuing to suggest that the authority continues to support Iraq's trade in accordance with international best practices and embodies the strength of the customs infrastructure. Basically, they're facilitating cross-border payments, everyone, and they have it tested, and that's really important because they've actually done it and they've reacted to it, and they're going to keep continuing. And so they're also doing all of this work that has basically just giving the confidence to international investors that Iraq is still, under the circumstances, we have conflict in the Middle East, but Iraq is still pushing forward, still doing business, still doing trade. Borders are still open. Airspace may have a problem, but the bottom line is that they have confidence in these transit routes, and the TIR system is working as planned, and there were no hitches, and they have no delays. So to me, all of those things are bringing confidence, and they're bringing confidence to the international partners in transit for the goods that are crossing the borders. They want safe, secure, they want to know that their products are going from A to B. So anyway, that's what I had for you guys tonight. Sorry about little Winnie. She gets up and snuggles up to that microphone. So if it was a little bit warbly, please forgive me. But enjoy your day. If you like the content, hit that like button. I hope everybody's having a wonderful week. It's beautiful. It looks great. Enjoy, and please hit that like button and subscribe.
Once again, guys, don't forget to hit that like button if you like this content. Subscribe to the channel or join us at the Militia Man and Crew Patreon community for even more exclusive content. You can also donate to this channel by hitting the links in the banner to help keep this page up and running. Your generous support is greatly appreciated, as always. Much, much appreciated. Thank you so much and have a great day.